Hi, how are you guys doing this morning? Okay, so I'm making this video to talk about one, Drake's album, More Life, two, Tyrese Gibson's whole breakdown over the internet over his wife's race and black women, and then of course again the non-African American versus the African American, which would be me. Let's get to the non-African Americans versus the African American debate. Let's get that out of the way. So, once again, there is this huge blowout on Twitter about how African Americans are entitled. We think that we rule the diaspora. We think that we are the blackest of the black, which is total bullshit because given that African Americans on average are about 60% to like 80% African, to sit there and say that we think we're the blackest is to be intellectually dishonest, historically dishonest, because it was so many African Americans being told that they aren't black enough, that they are actually mixed, that they are Europeans, to try and disassociate ourselves from West Africa, North Africa, East Africa. No, not, well, why did I say North Africa? I was about to say Central Africa. Like, the majority of us are West African and Central African. Some of us have a little bit of East African in us as well, because certain Central African countries and East African countries do overlap. And then there are of course African Americans who are a little bit of North Africa. It's not just West and Central African countries that we are a part of, but the majority of us, like a large chunk of our African DNA, is West African and Central African. But the whole debate got started over Drake's album More Life, because in More Life, a lot of his songs, I didn't want him to think I was talking to myself, but I'm recording a video. In More Life, it took a lot of influence from Black British culture, grime, and he featured a couple of grime artists like Skepta and Gigs. I, for one, like Gigs. A lot of people say that grime is trash. They don't like UK rappers. I do. I think the problem with some African Americans is that they aren't used to the accent. They feel it's too posh. They feel as if it's like a white person in a proper accent rapping. And I know that's the large issue with a lot of people with grime rappers, is that they just feel as if it's just inauthentic. I disagree. I personally like Gigs. I like his voice. I've been listening to a lot of Black British artists, and I'm not going to sit here and invalidate their artistry just because I'm in my little bubble of hip hop and rap in America. I'm going to put it out here. I'm not going to sit here and act as if hip hop is the end all of Black music in the diaspora. With that out of the way, there are a lot of Black people from out of the diaspora in America sitting here saying things like hip hop ain't all that, and African Americans need to stop acting as if they claim everything, when historically we are the ones that are told we don't have a culture and that hip hop isn't that great and that we are ghetto trash, especially when it comes to African American women. For instance, I was on Tyrese Gibson's page looking at the comments of people arguing over his wife's race, and one young man said that she definitely looks better than a Black American woman. So when I corrected him and saying, like, no, she doesn't, like, just because she's light skinned with straight hair or whatever, with a thin nose, and she's racially ambiguous, does not make her a better looking woman than me or maybe Sanaa Lathan. You're not going to compare her to Beyonce. Like, Beyonce is a beautiful woman. You're not going to compare her to Kelly Rowland. You're not going to compare her to so many beautiful dark skinned and brown skinned and light skinned African American women. And that woman is not a Black woman. That woman is a non-Black woman of color, a non-Black Latina who got a little bit of Jamaican and African American in her. One, Jamaican is not a race. If you say Afro Jamaican, then we can tell that you're Black. Most people who are Black and Jamaican will just say Jamaican, and for the most part, we understand you're saying you're Black. We get it, but that woman is not a Black woman. She has a little bit of Black in her. This is a non-Black woman of color. There are so many non-Black POC in Caribbean countries. Okay, it's not rare. It is not rare to meet a person of color from Jamaica and for them to not be Black. It's really possible. I don't believe for one second that that woman is a black woman. I think Tyrese Gibson is color struck. I think he hates black women. I think he wants people to think that he is so pro black woman when really he's not. And he married a non-black woman, but instead of just being honest and saying my wife isn't black, you want to sit here and lie to us and say that she's a black woman so you don't get to look like the anti-black misogynist that you are. I think that's what that's about. And I think that Tyrese looks like a damn fool, posting pictures saying you can argue that she's a white woman, you know, say what you feel. And then I'm just sitting here just writing all these comments and he's sitting there like just allowing it. You're allowing people to drag your wife. I'm not even dragging your wife, I'm dragging you. I said that she's a beautiful woman, but she's not a black woman. This woman got a little bit of black in her. She's claiming like a little bit of African American in her so she can look like she's one of the people. And she's not. She's a non-black woman of color. She really is. She's not white, but that is not a black woman. That is not a black woman of color. So just be honest with yourself, Tyrese. And then let me just say this. For you to tell people that you don't like women wearing a lot of weaves and makeup and then upload a picture of your wife in the same thing that you claim to hate, and that's why you use so many women for sex, because it's just about their looks and it's not about their brains, because if they just wear a bunch of weave and makeup, then they are vapid and they are only good for sex. That's essentially what you said. And I know you were talking about black women. You try to make it general and say, oh, this has nothing to do with race, when it's obvious that it had to do with black women. You were talking about black women. Like, you just been on the stint of trying to justify why you are with your wife. Tagging her as black queen, all of that is just ridiculous. And even if that is a black woman, you know good and well that when people think of black queen, blah, 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 we think of women that are visibly black. We think of people like Beyonce, Kelly Rowland. Am I saying that there can't be black women who are beautiful and light-skinned, racially ambiguous, and white passing? Certainly. Mariah Carey, I feel, is one of the prettiest women in the music industry. I love Mariah Carey. That is a biracial black woman. But do I feel that she represents the general standard of beauty for black women? I mean, not really. And I'm not saying I just want all dark-skinned women to be the standard of beauty, all visibly black women to be the standard of beauty. I want it to be diverse. But I feel if we're going to have the face of black beauty, it should be someone that is visibly black first, and then we can have someone like Mariah Carey, and then we can have someone like Zendaya. But I saw so many people try to justify Miss Gibbs being black by saying, well, she's certainly darker than Zendaya. You just a lie. Now, back in 2013 and 2014, a lot of us did not think that Zendaya was a black girl. I thought that she was Latina, but the reason why I thought that because I was less educated about the Latinx ethnicity. A lot of us thought that Latinx was a race. When we found out that no, there are Afro-Latinx, and then there are plenty of black people in Latin America who look like Zendaya. Now we know that Zendaya is visibly black. Now we know this is a light-skinned black girl that can sometimes be taken as racially ambiguous. Okay? So Zendaya is definitely more passing to be black than this woman. And I'm not saying there aren't people that look like this woman that are black. There are actual light-skinned biracial people that identify as black. I'm not one of those people that say biracial isn't black. I'm one of those people that says you're black. If you got a black parent or have black parent, you're black. Debate your mama on this, but I just feel that it's counterproductive to just tear families apart, erase people's blackness just because you don't feel comfortable considering people that look white or look close to it black. I feel that it's counterproductive. And speaking of the African Americans versus non-African Americans, there were a lot of non-African Americans butting their noses into our racial politics, calling us obsessed with race and saying that we are self-hating because so many African Americans love claiming mixed people just to have an excuse to date those people or marry those people. Well, I know for a fact that so many people in certain parts of Africa have fathers, have mothers who had to sue to be considered black because certain politics tore families apart because, as discussed online, the ideal of blackness wasn't made mainstream until African Americans had to fight to be considered black instead of being called nigger coons, coloreds, Negroes. Blackness was a construct that was made by African Americans, and then other people in the African diaspora decided to call themselves black. It's like, okay, we can't just go by ethnicity anymore. We can't just go by nationality anymore. We can't just go by continental ancestry anymore. We're black people. Light-skinned people, racially ambiguous, dark-skinned black people, we're black people. But in certain parts, because of colonization, because of European settlers, just a history of tearing families apart, separating them by race, a lot of Africans today are starting to say, well, I'm black. I should be considered black because the rest of my family is black. Why am I going to be considered white or a light-skinned person just because I don't look like the rest of my family? That's basically how it is. So instead of worrying about how we want to be considered black or how we want to consider certain people black so we can marry them, how about you worry about your father who has to sue to be considered black so he can stay with your mom? That's basically the reality of it all. So just leave us out of this. Worry about what's going on in your area. And just stop being so anti-black towards African Americans, because it has nothing to do with the fact that people are trying to claim this woman to be black, because we have a history of anti-blackness in America, and we're considering actual black people with black parents black, even though they are light-skinned or half white, got a white father, got a white mother. That has nothing to do with it. People just want to consider this woman black because they are obtuse. They want to look like they are pro-black while really marrying this non-black woman because they don't like black women. Tyrese has dated light-skinned women in the past. They are beautiful black women. Tyrese's wife is not. She's a beautiful non-black woman of color. She's very beautiful. I have nothing against the woman unless she's believing half of the fuckboy logic that he's believing in. But that's all I have to say for this topic. Back to More Life. My verdict of the album, pretty good. A lot better than Views. Not better than If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. Doesn't really have the same impact as Nothing Was the Same. Does not have the same originality as Take Care, but it's a pretty good album. Am I a big fan of Drake biting styles from other places in the diaspora? Not really. I personally am not a fan of that island sound because I feel that it's cheap. I feel like it's inauthentic. If I want to hear that, I'm going to hear it from actual Caribbean artists. I'm going to hear it from actual Black British artists. I'm going to hear from actual artists that live with the music, that speak to their ethnicity. But no, I'm not like someone that's hating on the album. I love the album. But the reason why there is this huge diaspora argument is because people feel as if Drake is a culture vulture. And then there are people saying, well, although we're not a fan of Drake just taking styles from other ethnic groups and saying that it's his and that he grew up with it, he does have claim to blackness. We can't sit here and say Drake's not a black person. We can't sit here and say, well, he has no right to dare touch blackness when he is a black man. And I think a part of this is that Drake feels as if something was taken from him. I think he feels as if growing up with his mother, he feels as if he didn't get the chance to indulge in blackness like other people did. And I understand. I don't feel that Drake is someone that's being harmful about it. I don't feel that he's one of those people that feel as if I'm not black enough or these mean dark-skinned people bullied me. I feel like he didn't get the chance to be around dark-skinned black people, visibly black people. And that's why a lot of his girlfriends are black and a lot of them are darker than a paper bag. And I even said, like, I don't even think Drake likes white girls like that. I don't even think he likes non-black women like that. I think he likes black women. I think he does. And I feel it's because he hasn't been around a lot of us. He hasn't been around a lot of black people. So when he's finally growing up and getting the chance to experience his blackness fully, I feel like Drake just wants to live it to the fullest. I think that's what Drake is all about. I think he wants to experience blackness in different parts of the world and not feel trapped in his Canadian side. Because so many people want to sit here and say that Drake is Canadian and that he's not American. He's African American. He's half African American. He's half black, half African American. His father is African American and his father is from Memphis. As someone said, if he were to just claim Tennessee and say, this is my home, I can make trap music, I can make the dirty South music, fine. But I think it becomes a problem when Drake tries to claim other areas in the United States that he is not from. I think that's why it's a problem, because we feel as if Drake being light-skinned and being mixed, we feel that at times he exploits his privilege and erases other artists that are authentic about their music, but they don't get as much shine as Drake because they may be dark skinned or they may not fit a safe image the way Drake does. So that's how this argument got started. I'm totally over it. I said something like, I would rather us argue over fried chicken, rice, jollof, than to just sit here and be nasty about it, saying fuck you cultureless Americas, fuck you dirty Africans. I don't like that. I like friendly competition. I like it when we are arguing over petty stuff like who has the better artist, okay, who has the better dance, okay, who has the better food. That's what I want to argue over. And I definitely don't want to argue with people saying whining or winning is better than twerking, because twerking is a whore dance and African American women are whores, because I had to argue with this asshole on a Patra video over that. And I'm just not here for it. But as long as it's friendly, as long as it's harmless, I have no issue with that. When it becomes nasty and we are taking shots at each other's cultures, that's when it becomes a problem. So as I said, I'm done for this for now. Have a great morning. I'm going to take a nap at the back of my car because I'm a commuter. Yeah, there's really no lounge area around here. Well, actually there is, but it just would look weird if I'm just sprawled out on the day bed and people are walking past me. Bye.